So in this generation, social media is huge as a creative. Some of the good things about social media is that you can build credibility and influence. It's great for introverts like me, but there's also a downside to it.
Do you guys feel like social media hinders your creativity?
Well, that's what we talk about here this week on the Cage Creative Podcast.
Yo, what's good, everyone? Welcome to the Cage Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Say.
And I'm Tony.
And we're here to help you break through mental barriers in your creative journey. In this episode, we'll be diving into whether or not social media hinders creativity. Let's get right into it.
Ooh, okay, let's get into it. So we all know that social media has been really huge for our generation, right? But because of who we are, we also have to talk about the bad of social media, and we are focusing on like the mental barriers that we place on ourselves when it comes to like just these different things that we face throughout our creative journey, right? So before we get into the meat and bones of the episode, let me ask you, do you feel like social media hinders your creativity?
For sure. I definitely feel like, yeah.
I can relate. But before we get into the whys, let's get into the perks of social media. So what do you feel like are some things that have been great for you personally on your creative journey when it comes to social media?
I feel really following a lot of creatives and just kind of seeing like their journey is like, I don't know, it's kind of like I see them as like influences. So just to see where everybody's like doing the new thing.
Yeah. I think influences are pretty good. Just the fact that you're able to see so many different like types of people and creatives and, you know, everybody doing their thing. I think that's been really huge. I say another thing just to piggyback off that is that like the connections and the opportunities that you can make. So like, yeah, the influences, but also just being able to be like kind of sort of in the room with these different creatives. Like, because really anybody on social media is like, I don't want to necessarily call it attainable, but like you can reach out to them, you know, you can connect with them. And then just the different job opportunities. Like I've gotten so much work off of Instagram, like just to be real. And just to go back into what you were saying, like I also got a lot of inspiration from like other creatives, especially as I was starting my photography and videography journey. Like a lot of my inspiration came from social media and like YouTube. YouTube is actually how I learned how like so many different techniques and like how to actually like put things into use and, you know, just so much about these crafts that, I mean, if it didn't exist, I mean, I just wouldn't have learned it, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess what's something else that you felt like social media has done for you personally on your creative journey?
I want to talk about like what you were saying earlier about like networking, because I feel like that's the greatest weapon to have as like one of the greatest weapons to have as a creative, just really networking and being able to surround yourself around other creatives. I feel it opens a lot more doors for you to like do more things as a creative, like whether, for example, I'm primarily a keyboardist, me running into you as another creative, and us both sharing the knowledge. Now I have some type of idea, like how to really maneuver like videography or like certain aspects of like that field. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that you're able to break it down that way is huge. Like, especially when it's like, as creators, we don't tend to be like in the same industry all the time. So like you said, like with me more so focused on videography and photography, and then you being on the artist side, like just being able to make that connection through social media and like just like really seeing what other people are going through in their journey. I think that's really dope because a lot of times like yeah, social media, you do get to see the end result, but you also get to see a little bit of people's processes and how they're progressing themselves. So I think that's really cool that you talk about that. I would say another benefit for me personally throughout my creative journey is I've always been an introvert. And I think that if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't be where I was today. Nor would I have all the great connections and, just all the opportunities that I've had today, because social media has let me like kind of put myself out there without having like to leave my bubble, as you can say.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I'm a huge introvert, and social media, like in that way, is a great outlet for introverts to really just showcase like what they can do. You don't really have to leave your bubble, really, or like put yourself in an uncomfortable situation to really like show the world like what you can do as a creative. So I think that's a pretty cool part of like, I don't know, being an introvert and having social media. I think that's cool.
Right, right. So now I want to get into the real topic. So we both answered that social media has hindered our creativity. So now we're about to get into the negative effects of social media. So I want to start by asking you, how do you feel like social media has hindered your creativity?
I feel like in certain periods of my life to where I felt kind of stagnant, I put myself in this mental barrier to where I was kind of like thinking a whole bunch of things, whether if I was like consuming way too much like information or just like really paying attention to certain pages. And I put myself in this mental barrier of like, all right, well, I'm not doing what this person's doing. I need to do better. So I guess like in a way of like comparing, that's one of the ways. And I feel like that's, a big negative, just comparing yourself as a creative, you can kind of stagnate yourself.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. Don't know who said it, but I heard it somewhere. But yeah, I could definitely agree, because man, there's so much great content. And if you really let it get to you, like it's detrimental to your creative process. Especially once you start seeing like just the ways that other people are doing things, and like say like if you have this grand idea that you're trying to do, like I have so many unfinished ideas, and I know for me personally, like to go into what you were saying about information overload, like I have these ideas that I know I can do, but I start like looking into things or like how to do this or how to do that, like, and that like just having too much information could like cause you to not do anything at all.
Yeah.
And like, so say like, for example, like starting a podcast, like, there's tons of content out there. And if you start reading each single thing, like it could set you back. Like you could start pushing things back. You could be like, oh, I need this, this, and this. Like, just to be honest with y'all, like we don't even have a logo right now, but the goal was just to start. So yeah. Also, like you said, I think you mentioned briefly, like wasting time. Like, man, like social media is a time waster if you let it, especially if you don't have self-discipline. You can find yourself scrolling on social media for minutes to hours, like just looking at content. Like, yeah, the content may pertain to you and whatnot, but still, like the amount of time you're putting into social media, you could be used elsewhere, doing anything else, literally. And I felt myself scrolling to the point where like I procrastinate on stuff, or like I'd be like, oh, I do this tomorrow, or I do this tomorrow, and then tomorrow like never comes. Literally, it never comes. And then like once you put too much time in between like the idea that you have to actually like trying to create it, like it gets harder. Like it's easy to like whenever something's like fresh on your mind to like try to go do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't write it down, it's just, all the little minute details and whatnot, they just kind of fade. So yeah, I really do agree with what you said on that.
I definitely agree with that. Like, I say that I want to do something, or let's say I want to get into the process of creating and I have something on my mind, but like, I end up going on social media um like those 5 minutes turn literally like really quick into an hour or 2 hours. And then I don't know, I feel like that is also like a mental like barrier in terms of just like not knowing when to be like, okay, that's enough. Like, let me like create or like get off and do something else. You can literally like waste your whole entire day or like just procrastinate days at a time, just not being able to like create.
I found myself doing that many times throughout my journey. I mean, I'm not where I am. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I still find myself like doing that now. Do you feel like you've ever had a time where you were placing too much value on your work, like likes or followers or something like that, when it came to like just things you were putting out there for people?
Yeah, there has been times where I feel like I place a lot of value on like followers in terms of just kind of like you won't really be recognized if you don't have a certain amount of following. I felt that way no matter like the type of content that you put out, no matter how dope it was, I wasn't really like recognized. So it kind of like put me in this place of like, well, dang, I don't know.
Yeah. Sheesh. Man, I'm starting to like rethink of like just the different instances where I was kind of like placing too much value on social media. I remember one instance, like back in the day, I won't name drop, but back in the day during my photography journey, I remember there was this artist that I really loved, and she started like commenting on my stuff. And I'll tell you, like I had the biggest head ever, and like like that was just like all that mattered to me. And that was like one of my highs during like the photography days, when like really there was so much more that mattered in that moment, I guess you could say. And I think over time, like once you start placing too much value on those type of things, like you start to like change your reasonings why, if that makes sense. And you're starting to like look for validation, and you're starting to like look for like people to tell you, oh, this is good and whatnot. And like when social media started to change the algorithm of like how they show your work to people, or like who they show it to, or whatever they did, I feel like that was the best time for me, because now it was like the amount of followers didn't really matter, because everybody wasn't going to see what you was going to post anyway. Another thing I want to get into is I feel like social media really messes up our perception of what success looks like. So, it's going to be touchy. But social media shows us the end result, right? Not everybody shows you all of their ups and downs, but more times than not, nobody shows you the downs. Like nobody shows you just like the tough shit that they actually have to go through, to get where they are. So I mean, if you kind of go on the social media looking at this ahead of time, which not too many people do, you can understand that like, they're showing you like the highlights of their life. Like, and I feel like that's what social media should be. But like I said, we're talking about the mental barriers. So if you're going into that the wrong way, like you can start like second guessing yourself, like you're not doing enough. And I know there have been times where I was seeing other people post things, or I see other people post like on their stories that they were at this place, they were meeting these people. And I was like, damn, I'm not doing enough,
Yeah.
And really like whatever you're doing today is enough. Like as long as you're like being consistent and like just focusing on you and like your journey, it's enough. But you have to get to that point where you can see that. And there have been many times, like I said, it definitely like, I don't want to say like it made me depressed, but it was really messing with my mental, like how I should be doing things, or like the timeline. Like it felt like I was trying to like shorten the timeline and like make these shortcuts and whatnot.
Yeah.
So do you feel like it ever messed up your perception of success?
That's a great question. I feel for a little bit it did mess up my perception of success. I want to say just kind of like like kind of what we were speaking about like earlier, whenever you don't focus on yourself and you pay more attention to others, you can kind of really put yourself in a place to where it's like, well, dang, the person that I wanted to like my post didn't like it. So that means I'm not good. And like putting yourself in that place can just really like, well, dang, I'm not successful. And that's why I think it's really important to really focus on yourself and just to really be consistent on like, you know, on yourself as a creative.
Yeah, consistency is key. I guess kind of the last thing that I feel like has affected me that I want to go into really quickly is I felt like social media has definitely reduced my creativity. I say that because I feel like I have become a consumer rather than a creator. I feel like kind of like we talked about earlier briefly, it was like wasting time. I like back in the day, I spent more time creating than I was on like social media because I mean, I just didn't really care about social media. Like I was literally just posting a post. But now I feel like the more things that are out there, these trends that are going, TikTok is becoming big. You got Reels, you got everybody on YouTube. It's so much out there to watch that you can really lose yourself in social media. I feel like I've done that a lot of times and like working on these like different habits to like try to get out of that funk has been like huge for me in this creative journey that I'm going through.
I feel like I put myself in a place of getting comfortable with social media and just like being okay with just consuming a whole bunch of content and not doing anything afterwards. And I feel like, I don't know, to me, it doesn't satisfy me personally. I feel like I have to either delete social media or spend some type of time away from it to focus on me so that I can find the time to create more like authentic, innovative, like, you know, original content instead of just consuming a whole bunch of content and then imitating like other things that I see from what other people do.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I think that is a great segue into how to not get caught up in the social media trap. So I know you just mentioned, creating better habits when it came to social media. And you take breaks from social media. So another thing I want to say that will definitely help is making sure you use social media intentionally. And doing this essentially will help make sure that you aren't spending any unwanted time. So if you catch yourself not doing anything productive on social media, because there's always productive things you can do on social media, like research, content, get inspiration. But when it comes to mindlessly scrolling, like you can cut that out. So whenever you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through like Reels or TikToks that don't really necessarily help you, like one thing I like to do is like a 5-second rule. So once you catch yourself doing that, you pretty much count down from 5. And when you hit 0, just close the app and go do something else. For me, that has definitely helped, even though I still click on my social media apps at times. And then when I realize I have to close them out. But this helps you spend less time on social media. Another thing I want to say you can do, just like you've already been doing, is like limiting like how much content you consume. So if you know that you like to watch YouTube, you can give yourself like an hour a day. I don't know, whatever works for your schedule, but an hour a day. And that way you're not just looking at all these different videos. It's like this 1 hour you spend, you are going to make sure that it's going to be the best hour that you spend on YouTube because that's all you got. And these kind of tips like help you really create like self-discipline and accountability. So if you find yourself struggling with self-discipline and holding yourself accountable, another thing you can do is find your creative friend that can hold you accountable.
A couple of tips that I have is normalize calling yourself out on your habits. And, you know, if you find yourself, all right, I'm starting to look on this person's story and this person's page way too much, and I'm starting to compare myself. It's okay, like, to mute that person's like story or mute that person's account until you find yourself in a better like mental place.
Yeah, muting people has been my top thing. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I got so many people muted. I got so many people muted. It's crazy. It's nothing personal. It's just that whenever I get on social media, there are just some things I don't want to see. Like, I'm cordial with a lot of people, so I don't want to necessarily just unfollow people. Like, I'm not that type of person. But there are like, there's just things I'm not really interested in when it comes to like people's lives and stuff like that.
So those are our tips. If you guys have any other tips that you feel that can help other creatives out there that are mentally struggling in in a similar position that others are, feel free to reach out to us and contact us through our social media page or email. If you made it this far, we really appreciate you guys. So just a quick recap, guys. We talked about the positive effects on social media, the negative effects, and gave a couple of tips on really just how to get past certain mental struggles that creatives deal with.